The best source of scientific evidence against the inborn talent myth is Anders Ericsson's book Peak, Secrets from the New Science of Expertise. Ericsson spent more than 30 years studying why some people rise to the top of their fields and others do not. He found that no matter what area of expertise you look at, the distinguishing factor is never inborn talent, a finding that caused him to question whether talent, as people usually use the term, even exists. There are people who are fast starters and people who are slow starters, and other people who anoint the fast starters as being talented and dismiss the slow starters as being knuckleheads. But the real knuckleheads are those who make such snap judgments. The slow starter who keeps working hard will quickly pass the fast starter who sits on his laurels, and the fast starter will need to begin working as hard as the slow starter to have a chance of catching up. And he may never catch up at all if he doesn't shed the pathogenic beliefs he developed by listening to the knucklehead who initially showered him with praise. The point Ericsson makes again and again is that talents are developed, not inborn. And developing a talent isn't simply a matter of putting in the time any old way. Working the right way, what Ericsson calls purposeful practice, means staying out of your comfort zone and applying yourself in a focused manner with specific goals in mind and with ways to judge whether you are meeting those goals. Working the right way is hard for everyone. So if you find yourself in love with training, you know definitely that you're doing it wrong. Staying out of your comfort zone is key. We have a comfort zone because our bodies and brains try to keep everything the same as much as possible at the cellular level. We have feedback mechanisms that maintain a steady internal temperature, heart rate, blood pressure, blood glucose level, etc., etc. And our brains tend to remain in their comfort zone too by staying wired the same. The technical name for this tendency to maintain stability is homeostasis. Of course, we can't maintain comfort zone homeostasis all the time. Our bodies have to work harder when we are exercising or running for a bus. And our brains have to work harder too when trying to solve a difficult mental problem. But if none of that is too extreme or lasts too long, our bodies and brains go back to their original state when life returns to normal. All that changes, however, when you reach for a new life by working to establish a new normal for yourself over the long haul. As you take your life out of your old comfort zone day after day after day, you challenge your brain and body to adjust to situations they've never encountered before, forcing them to struggle to cope. Years ago, I produced a community newspaper in Chicago with the help of a freelance artist. Among other things, she would produce logos for various sections of the paper, and it often happened that new images were needed for new features. When I would go to her and describe what I wanted, her first reaction was always, "What? That's impossible. I don't have time for that. You don't pay me enough for that. There is no way that can be done in time for the next issue." And then she would fall silent for a few seconds as an idea dawned on her. And then she would say, "Oh, yeah, that's no big deal. No problem." Our brains and bodies react the same way. When we first reach for a better life, our brains and bodies sound alarm bells at every level. As far as they are concerned, you are asking too much. They can't possibly give you what you want. So you find yourself continually beset with negative thoughts and emotions, and maybe even panic states. Initially, your brain and body raise alarms because they can't cope by doing things the same old way. But then gradually your cells hit on the solution of activating genes that were sitting around doing nothing beforehand. With the help of these newly activated genes, your brain and body increasingly find that they can cope better and better, and eventually quite well. At that point, they settle into a new comfort zone, a new homeostatic normal. that meets all of the demands you are placing on them as a new you, and you feel great. Reaching for a new you necessarily means living through a period of emotional hell while literally every cell in your body is struggling to adjust. How long does this period of adjustment take? It depends. Typically, people try to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps without any psychological smarts or soulmate support. In this case, a person tries half-heartedly and quits, tries half-heartedly and quits, tries half-heartedly and quits again and again until he finally gives up and reverts to his old comfort zone after devoting perhaps years to getting nowhere. Reaching for a new life is hard enough that it may happen that even a person with psychological insight and soulmate support goes through those same self-defeating cycles at first. Then inner changes kick in that reveal themselves as a new one-way will to succeed, an iron commitment to do whatever is needed to change for the better. So the real question is, how long will it take to establish a new comfort zone after a person has become thoroughly committed to the quest? The amount of time needed to reach your new normal depends on what you're seeking to accomplish and the psychological understanding that guides you along the way. If you try to accomplish a lot while knowing next to nothing and without seeking any soulmate support, you will never reach your goal. Count on it. On the other hand, if your goal is limited to a few skills and you have a lot of support, you can accomplish a great deal even without psychological soul searching. The rock band The Beatles is a case in point. According to Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers, the Beatles were a group of average Joes with relatively little musical training who formed a bad rock band, which remained an inferior rock band until they accepted a gig in a strip club in Hamburg, Germany, where they were put through hell and emerged as one of the greatest rock bands of all time.
The most interesting thing about the Beatles is what happened to them before they came to America. In the 1960 and 1959, when they were just kids, they were invited to go to Hamburg in Germany to be the house band at a strip club. And they went there and they stayed there for months on end. And 7 days a week, they played 8-hour sets, night after night in this strip club, right? And over the course of that extraordinary crucible, that experience of playing, they taught themselves how to be a great band, right? In fact, we think now that by the time the Beatles came to America, they had played together as a live band 1,200 times. We could go to all of the clubs on Friday night in San Francisco where all the promising young bands are playing. I submit to you would not find a single band that has played together 1,200 times, right? Just doesn't happen. So what made the Beatles special? What made them special is that they were willing to play together 1,200 times, willing to play 8-hour sets 7 nights a week, 4 months at a stretch. And why were they willing? Because they believed in the notion of meaningful work. They had an opportunity to throw their heart and mind into something and get something back. And that made all the difference in the world.
The Hamburg experience transformed them apparently without any of them having or developing psychological smarts along the way. This is the brute force method of personal betterment. I will give you another example in a later video. The Beatles didn't have to put up with the unreasonable demands placed on them by the Hamburg strip club. They could have taken other gigs, but they didn't, because they recognized that they were being transformed into a great band by the ordeal. The same kind of thing will happen to you. It may take years before you reach your new normal in every respect, but you will start improving noticeably much sooner than that, which will help keep you committed to the rough road ahead. But something unexpected will help too. You will come to recognize that you are living an authentic life in contrast to the phony life you lived before. You may be miles from your goal and seemingly having lost your way as far as other people are concerned, but you will see yourselves as finally being on the right path.